Hi there again, and welcome to Between Two Teachers. I'm Madeline Cronenberg,
And I'm Consuelo Lara.
and we want to once again say that we're coming to you from the ancestral lands of the Chochenyo, Karkin, Ohlone Native peoples, who were here long before us. We want to start this week with a continued conversation on our friend Measure R. Tuesday's the election, and prior to that, we've been working hard getting the word out to the community about Prop 13, which is going to help to fund Measure R, which gives us some money to fund the school bonds program in California, but also Measure R itself. And Measure R is such an important next step for the bond program in West Contra Costa. And I know you've been doing a lot of work on Measure R, and you've got a letter to read that we hope you'll find well, you're not going to find it in the East Bay Times because they weren't able to print it. However, we were hoping other news outlets will. And in place of that, we're also going to read it.
And this is in response to some of the misleading things that particular paper, which we all know is Republican Republican views, very strong Republican views. But anyway, that this is in a response to some of the misleading things that they have been putting out there, or they printed. So this was a rebuttal to that, but they, are not going to print that because they're slanted. So this would have been to the editor. We are West County parents, employees, residents, volunteers, union representatives, and elected officials, and want to set the record straight. Much of the information in the pieces that have been written are plainly incorrect or misleading. The opponents of Measure R continue to dwell on events that occurred over 5 years ago. Since that time, however, there's been significant and positive change in the bond and school construction program. Rather than continue to concentrate on the past, we need to learn from it and move forward. Deferring needed school improvements to the future will increase taxpayer costs in the tens of millions of dollars as construction costs continue to rise in the Bay Area. Here is a point-by-point rebuttal to the arguments used by the opponents of Measure R. Rather than rely on the opinions of an anti-school bond activist, we encourage voters to get the facts, find the facts. Here's one claim. There's no specific plan on how the money will be spent. Not true. In 2016, the district prepared a facilities master plan. I think we shared that big yellow book. It's about this thick. After extensive input from the school communities and the public, over 80 community meetings. I remember as a teacher being part of those meetings. This over 500-page comprehensive plan provides a detailed assessment of the upgraded needs of all the schools in the district, cost estimates, and a roadmap that lists and prioritizes specific projects in specific schools with a focus on critical seismic and other health and safety requirements. The plan can be viewed on the district website, wccusd.net, page 6945. And by the way, after I read this, I'm also going to publish this widely electronically.
And I'll attach it here. So if you're watching this, you'll be able to just click on the link.
Because it's very good information. The text of Measure R clearly states the priorities and projects are guided by the master plan. Number 2, there are insufficient fiscal safeguards, and the district has ignored audit recommendations. Not true. Since 2016, the district bond program has been subject to one of the most vigorous bond oversight and audit programs in the state of California, well beyond that required by law, over and above. The district, with support of the board, has and continues to implement best management and control practices and procedures recommended by third-party auditing firms, including 2016 Forensic Accounting Investigation Report. Third-party financial and performance audits can be viewed also on the district website, and that'll be attached. So, background and progress towards implementing the recommendations can also be viewed. Next claim, the schools are overbuilt. The opponents of Measure R claim the district has overbuilt, quotation marks, some individuals would schools. Some individuals would prefer a bare bones approach, but our school designs reflect the standards established by our community as a whole. As part of the long-range facilities master plan process in 2016, the district established school facilities and material standards in collaboration with principals, teachers, parents, and the broader community. These school design standards meet the requirements set by the state and provide the template for the type of 21st century educational facilities that our community wants. The facility educational standards can be also viewed on that. And this reminds me, you know, I have all those photographs. This might be a good, we could post the photographs. And when you go through them, they're gorgeous, and you can see that consistency. And lastly, that the board is exceeding construction budgets. Not true. The board and the Citizens Bond Oversight Review Committee review construction costs on a monthly basis. Over the past 5 years, projects completed or under construction are at or under budgets approved by the board. The most recently completed major project at Nystrom Elementary was $3.7 million under budget. Construction cost reports can be viewed in the agenda packets of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee on its website. They also have documents that explain all of this as well. So lastly, we're fortunate to live in a community with vibrant, diverse, award-winning schools. Over the last 20 years, our community has been generous and has made critical investments in the schools. The district has used previous bonds to rebuild and modernize many of the schools in our neighborhoods. 44 of the 53 schools have been rebuilt or some renovation, but the work is unfinished. Independent experts have indicated that over $1 billion in improvements are required at district schools. And many of these schools are located in very underserved areas, especially Richmond. In our diverse district, this is a major equity issue. Now it's time for schools like Stige, Fairmont, Valley View, Kennedy High, and Richmond High, which are on the priority list, to be rebuilt. Campuses in other communities will be rehabilitated. So please join us in supporting and voting yes on Measure R on March the 3rd.
There it is.
There it is.
There
so
it is.
Get
So
the facts.
We will post it. I'll also post the link to the hot schools issue that goes along with it, because one of the types of renovations that our children need is air conditioning in schools that have become, dangerously unsafe because of climate change. So we, taking all of that into account, we really do need to have your vote, and you can join the people who've endorsed it. Rochelle Pardue of Okimoto, I'll call her out because she was one of the first elected officials to endorse it, but also Superintendent Tony Thurman, the Superintendent of Public Instruction, who used to serve on our board and whose children attend our school district, and both our State Senator Nancy Skinner and our State Assembly Member Buffy Wicks, all, and the Democratic Party, the El Cerrito Democratic Party, the West County Democratic Party, and the Contra Costa County Democratic Party, all endorse Measure R. So please join us in supporting it, so when we come back next week, we can celebrate the passage of Measure R. And that's the election. And there are many other things happening in the election, but we're going to let that go for here.
That's enough for now.
That's enough for us. Later. Measure R is our big election issue. I wanted to mention a job opening that I found, because I just find this to be so amazing. We've mentioned here Teach for America. And Teach for America is a pipeline of folks who have not got any education training, who are recent college graduates in something that is not education. If you're an education major, you're not eligible to go into Teach for America. As my son tried, and he said, no, you have an education background, so you don't qualify for this.
Oh,
and he tried to do it in New Orleans, but anyway, but he was experienced, so he had to become a temp a substitute instead of get a position through them. Anyway, Teach for America is hiring, and they really do develop people. They're about developing folks into becoming teachers and really giving them a short amount of practice and then putting them straight into classrooms that have our most vulnerable kids in them. And that's the model. That is the model of Teach for America. And over the years, they've received a tremendous amount of funding from the federal government. And some of that may be cut back now because of all of the various cutbacks. So they, however, are now looking for a new position. And the position that they're hiring for is, let me just pull this up because I find it fascinating. There are two of them. 2 vice presidents of individual giving. So you would think, all right, so this is somebody who's out soliciting donations. But this is for their gifts portfolio. And this is a person who, this is because they are expanding their gifts portfolio. And the gifts portfolio is their outreach to givers who will give 7- and 8-figure amounts. Now, if you know a lot of people who can give 7- and 8-figure amounts, that just means you really have to know Mr. Bloomberg and all his friends, and the people we've talked about here, who are the billionaires, because that's basically who you need to be. They're very flexible, so you can live pretty much anywhere in the United States, because what they're looking for is your list of people you're going to call. So you could live in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. You could live in Houston, you could live in Dallas, you could live in Chicago, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., or Boston. Those are preferred. But if you have a list and you live somewhere else, as long as you have 10 years experience doing this, 10 years experience, they would like to talk to you. They would like to talk to you. So I'll post this too. So if anybody listening to this wants the Teach for America job, it is out there.
Okay, a couple of things come to mind. If I'm a person that has those contacts, do I even need a job? I mean, would I really be unemployed if I knew all those people just
well,
like...
you know what they don't have in here is how much they're going to pay
And that's the other thing. How much would I get paid for such a... I mean, are you serious? It's ridiculous.
Well, you can apply for this job and find out.
It's ridiculous.
Isn't it? Yes.
Oh, it's absurd.
But it's a little peek into how they operate.
Oh,
Probably
yeah.
negotiable.
Yes.
It's negotiable.
You know, it could be a percentage. There are many possibilities here.
Yeah, it's on commission.
Who knows? And if Teach for America is watching this and wants to clarify it, we would be happy to hear from you. And
Agreed.
but this, all I'm doing is reading your public announcements here.
Yep. So if you're unemployed, get a job. Yeah.
So, well, we're looking. This is the whole idea of philanthropy, right? You're looking. This is mega philanthropy. This is what it looks like. This is what mega philanthropy.
Well, it's philanthropy
with
quotation marks because it's not.
No. All right. So there's that. And the other thing I wanted to point out that happened this week. This was in the state of California. Was the LAT literacy lawsuit. So there was a lawsuit that was put forward for children who had not mastered literacy, were not reading on grade level. And the judge agreed to the settlement, and the state of California is going to have to pay $50 million somehow. We're not really sure how. The specifics of how are not clear. But they also, this is the thing I've got to point out. Sometimes I do talk about attorneys. So the pro bono attorneys on this case get $1.9 million.
Pro bono.
Off the top.
That's pro bono.
Off the top.
Yeah,
And the thing that they proved in this case, which was also an interesting thing, was this. They listed the lowest 26 districts. A group of the 200 largest districts in the United States. And out of that 200, they listed them in performance. They ranked them in performance. Out of that performance ranking, there was the lowest 26. And out of that lowest 26, half of them are in California. And what are they? There are urban districts, right? And so they were Stockton, Bakersfield, San Bernardino, Fresno, Santa Ana, Fontana, LA, Oakland, Ontario. What do we know about them? They're the ones that have been under FCMET. They're the ones who have charter school issues.
Yep.
Right? That's the same list.
Yeah, charters have
That's the
targeted
same
that.
list. These children, these are the
target
children, right? That this exactly, you could just merge these two lists together and see that. And what was interesting to me is that list. I read the litigation, and when I read the lawsuit and I saw this list there, I thought, well, look at who's in this list.
Yeah.
So the question is how these districts and other districts are now going to benefit from the $50 million, and we have to follow that up.
Yeah. It's not an accident.
No.
It's not an accident. It is deliberate, and it's all from the goal of money, making more money.
It's very much about money.
And it's, lots of times racially motivated as well, because they know that the poor...
Oh, that's another thing about it. If you go through this list of districts.
They're mostly children of color.
Right.
And the people making the money are not of color, and they just go in and take the money. They don't have any problem with that whatsoever. If they can make some money off of it, it's the best investment they could make. So that's what we have to constantly be on the lookout for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really true. People they simply can't be trusted, and that's this is how this has played itself out. But the information plays out in different places. So to be in the middle of
really
this particular
interesting.
lawsuit is interesting.
Sometimes you can accidentally get, I
didn't even know that list existed.
Yeah.
When I looked at that, I said, well, look at this. This
yeah.
is who's on it.
And our job is to bring it to you, expose it.
And I'll link this also
Let you-
in the bottom of the...
Yeah, because we have all of that playing out in our own district as well. We have rich people making a lot of money on our district, and it's a fight. It's a real fight. It's going to continue to be a fight. In November, it's going to be a big fight for power against, those motivated by and controlled or helped, supported by the landlords of some of our charter schools, and those of us who are really have social justice issues around supporting students and schools and teachers and unions, etc. That's going to be the fight. That's going to be the difference.
There's an issue in Oakland that came up this week. Sort of shows how convoluted these the efforts of the districts get. So Oakland passed something that I was hoping we would, and we did pass, but we haven't done anything with it yet. There's a law that says that our school districts are eligible, have the right to appoint members to a charter school board. Remember, charter school boards are not elected; they're appointed by themselves, by whoever is the owner-operator of the charter school. So in Oakland, they have a charter committee, and they are supposed to implement this set of appointments. And the reason to appoint is for oversight and transparency. This person is simply there. The reason is for them to report back to the elected Oakland board and let them know how things are going.
Yeah, oversight, but
Oversight,
much like
transparency,
our
oversight.
and report back to the
Right, you're on the
district.
board. You went to the meeting. Tell us what's happening.
Yeah.
Right. So they have an opening. They're looking at who they're going to appoint to that, and this particular school is struggling. So they've decided they're only going to appoint somebody to schools that are struggling. That's number one. And number two is that they're appointing people who then can help the school not struggle. Now that is not the role of the elected official and the folks who've been elected to serve. This is not their rule, their purpose at all. For them to decide they're going to do this, so they are looking. This particular school is shrinking in enrollment, and if it shrinks, it's shrinking because it's not serving the population, and ultimately that may mean that school would have to be closed. but not if they appoint a marketing executive.
Well, I mean, that's what Go is all about. You know, so it's probably somebody related to them
Go
or
Oakland,
from
right,
there. Because Go basically is a recruitment
Absolutely.
organization to recruit more parents. And you start the narrative, this is a failing school district, wouldn't you, yada, yada, yada. That's what we're having here. Those people are not our friends. And the fact that they come in and train parents, etc. So they will probably get on the boards. And then
Easily.
they'll say, oh, let us help you. Let us recruit.
But this, to me, this was just blatant that they had just flat out said it. This is what we're going to do now. We're going to look for somebody who is a marketing exec. And so the Oakland parents who were at the meeting have pointed this out and said this is completely wrong. And they pulled up the resolution that they got passed because they wanted to have input as to who was on those boards. It was the only thing that gave the community anything, and instead the board has totally flipped it so that now their person is supposed to keep that charter school going.
That board is really not fighting very hard for those kids, for those parents, and for those
they're
people
closing all these other schools and working to keep these schools open. I mean, it's very unfortunate.
It is unfortunate.
So,
Okay.
what else did we want to? Oh, we want to talk about the news in the district.
Deficit?
Yeah.
Let's talk about our favorite subject, the deficit. We, the update there is, yes, we have $20 million that we have to cut for next year. And our CBO business person, Dr. Wold, and Mr. Duffy came up with the cuts, and this is for next year, next school year. And because of certain timelines, if you're going to let people go, you have to notify them certain timelines, deadlines before you actually let them go. So some of those had to be done right away. So it came down to about 250 individuals, and some of these people were my friends. I worked with a couple of them at Helms and at Richmond High. I mean, this is the most terrific thing ever. And to be put in that position, and basically all you're saying is it's in the form of a resolution, and the board has the opportunity to say yes or no, and that's about it. You can't really, get in there and micromanage and say, okay, take these people off the list, save these individuals. There were things on there that are dear to my heart: art teachers, music teachers, counselors, and psychologists.
All the administrators.
And then all the administrators, and somebody that's gone to the district and said, hey, I want this implemented. Well, who is going to do it if we don't have coordinators and executive directors, etc.? So it's kind of, it's just insane. And so we did have to vote on that. And I have to say, everybody on the board was very angry about this. Nobody wanted to vote for this. In fact, Mr. Phillips did not, and he had a lot of really good questions that he asked. And I think for the rest of us, it was like these two individuals, superintendent and the CBO, this is all on them. They have to come up with the solution to this and make it right. And could there have been another way of doing this? I don't know. It seems like we've been having so many meetings, and the stipulation seemed like we were under the gun by the deadlines that had to be done. Mm-hmm. So, but I think success is going to rely on how well those two are able to work with our units, with our bargaining units, and whether they go into negotiations and open or not. Still, they have to work with them in good faith, with honesty and integrity, and cooperate. This is not a them and us thing. This is, pitted against each other. We're in all this together, and listen, because some of our good ideas may come from that group of people, because they're in it. They know, what this is like, some solutions that may come from it. So it's very upsetting, it's very depressing, and we are just moving forward, and we'll see the next steps, what's going to come next, I guess, by the next step.
It's a very frustrating situation, and it's happened over and over again in California and in other places, but certainly here and even now there are other districts that are also laying off for a variety of reasons, but it usually comes down to two things. I mean, this is what's happened is you've exceeded your budget, and you've exceeded it either because, and this is true for almost all of the districts that are in this situation, you've exceeded it very often because of special ed, because you do not know how much your special ed is going to cost to begin with. And I really believe the state has to find a way to backfill that, so that we should not, and San Francisco should not, and Sweetwater shouldn't have to be firing teachers because the special ed costs went up and the state of California refuses to backfill that in any way. So that's legislation. That's something that CTA could partner with. We should all get together with California PTA could get together with. And I actually am going to meet with folks about doing legislation to do this. And I think there is legislation right now about about special ed, but I think it has to be really hooked to the budgets and the fact that there should not be layoffs because of this. So that's one reason. And the other reason is people do not have controls on their budgets. And we put in the Tyler transparency tool, but we didn't put in the tool that goes with it, which apparently Tyler has and other companies, other places have, which basically gives you budget controls. We don't have that, and our public doesn't have that. We can see every check that anybody is writing, but we can't see where they are in terms of their budget. And we don't have the requirement that a group of people have to sign off before you go over a budget. And if you do, then you need to let the board know. You need to let the public know.
The public, yeah.
Because what we have just seen is what happens when you keep it a secret.
That's what happens, yeah.
That is what happens, and it's happened in each of these districts. So I believe now that in terms of process and people, I don't think FCMAT is the answer. We had FCMAT here for 20 years. FCMAT came into existence. It's the organization that's supposed to address these fiscal issues in schools. And it hasn't stopped them. What FCMAT does is give you another layer of people who come in, and they're still working with the system you had. And so over and over again, the same places, although FCMAT is there, they still wind up laying off teachers. That's not the answer. Process is the answer. There needs to be a different set of processes, I believe. And if the process is there, it doesn't matter whether you have newer people coming in or less experienced people, or something happens and there's a trade-off. Because when this first started, what did they say? Oh, you had changes in your CBOs. How could that possibly be the reason? Yeah. How could that even be something that legitimately could be said? Mr. Clark said that.
Shift?
Drift.
It was drift.
Drift, because you had multiple people in charge. So the deal is, everybody has the same process, let the people drift, but the numbers will stay the same.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the numbers will be public. Because that's the shock here. And the part that frustrates people is that Mr. Duffy and Dr. Wald have not said, and here's why it won't happen again.
I know, that's true. They haven't.
And that is a glaring omission, and it's like screaming at us, but we're not going to tell you why it won't happen again.
Yeah.
The only reason is because I am here. No, that's not a good reason. It has to be, what is the process you've put in so it won't happen again?
And we want to explore that, what those can look like and need to happen. Like this is happening up in the state of California. So it is a state issue that we have to.
There is no process in place.
Yeah.
And the places there are many places that have never had this problem, but a lot of that is because they have very experienced people, and you can't rely on that. I was saying this to somebody the other day. When you have a team of people, when you have teachers in a certain grade level and they're unsuccessful, what happens? The people in the next class have to pick up their kids, right? They start behind, and that's what happens. When you have inexperienced people running your business office,